Get ready for some hard-hitting podcast action as you're tuned in to the Slam Session. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Slam Sessions. I'm your host, Albert Albanese, and like I said a couple of weeks ago when I did this Slam Sessions podcast, we're going to make things a little bit more interesting again, and that's where we're at tonight, making things a little bit more interesting. As you know, if you want to see anything related to the Slam Sessions Podcast Network, go on Facebook.com/the Slam Sessions Podcast Network. Give us a like. Go on Twitter, it's at the Slam Sessions, and give us a like over there too, or a thumbs up, or a heart, or whatever it is on Twitter. I don't know. Social media baffles me sometimes. So this week is a really special show for the Slam Sessions. I told you guys I wanted to make this show a lot more must-see, a lot more interesting, so I figured what's the best way to do that? Fan service. Let's just, let's just get the idea of people who are fans of the product and fans of wrestling in general and fans of the show involved. So I posed a question on my personal Twitter, on my personal Facebook earlier, and I know that it's not fair to maybe people who are fans of the show who might not. And this wasn't really on the Slam Sessions page, but I just don't know if there's enough traction yet to do that. I don't know if I would have even gotten responses there. So until I can kind of figure out where I'm getting a little more interaction on that page, interact on that page if you were felt left out, interact on that page a lot more. I'll start posing these questions there too. I had one simple question. You guys are all big wrestling fans. So am I. There's a lot of people out there who are not. And some people might actually be interested in becoming a wrestling fan. So, this usually, the way I always think of this is the significant other scenario. It's, you are a wrestling fan, you start dating somebody new. When that happens, you tell them, you're on, your first couple of dates. What are your interests? Oh, I like, football, and, I do podcasting, and, I'm actually a wrestling fan. Oh, wrestling. I remember that. That was really cool, and they'll throw out Hulk Hogan or Stone Cold or The Rock. And, they'll be like, oh, maybe I used to watch that in, during the Attitude Era in the 90s, or my brothers watched that, or whatever you usually get when you're, talking about wrestling with somebody who really isn't a fan right now. So time goes on, relationships start to get, a little bit more serious, and, you're talking to your significant other, and finally, she says, hey, look, you hang out at home and you watch wrestling by yourself. We're starting to get closer. We want to hang out every day. Maybe that's something that we can do together. So my question is that at that point you stop and you think, okay, I have to get her into being a wrestling fan. So my question was very simple. What WWE match do you show a significant other that will, or a friend or whoever it may be, that to get them into pro wrestling? And more importantly, mostly the WWE. I pose this question as the WWE, and I'll explain it in a couple of seconds. What match do you choose? You get one match. You get a match you can choose. You can show them something. And what do you show them? And I got a lot of responses. So first of all, what I want to do is, and I really hope I'm not leaving anybody out here, I double checked the list and I think I have everybody. But for Mike Marone, Craig Como, Jim Caruso, Adonis, Rob, Jesse Jobin, Marcos, Alicon, Suzanne, Thomas, Mike, Andre, and Chris, thank you all. Thank you all for, and Jimmy, I'm sorry, thank you guys all for giving me your answers to what to the answers to this question, and your opinions on this. I had a lot of really good opinions. I'm going to share. I share it with my answer was actually shared with a few people. So I'm going to get to that one last, and I'll give everybody else's, and I'll kind of break down a little bit about each of them. But here's the big thing that I want to take out of this. I use the WWE as for a reason. The reason why I use the WWE is because of its accessibility. The WWE is the most accessible wrestling product out there. Now, my friend Jesse had made a good point that now more than ever, Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling and Lucha Underground are more accessible. But the WWE will always be the most accessible promotion And if you are a big wrestling fan, like most of us are that commented on this, most of us have the WWE Network, so we have the ability to pull up any WWE match that we want to. So this is the reason why I picked the WWE. First of all, the WWE is the more entertainment-based wrestling promotion. I also didn't throw out Global Force Wrestling in there. That's something else that maybe somebody might want to show somebody from Global Force or Impact or the TNA days. But some people did bring up the idea of Ring of Honor and New Japan. The Okada versus Omega match came up. A lot of old school Ring of Honor stuff with guys, like Christopher Daniels and Austin Aries and Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson and CM Punk. Some of that stuff came up. But the reason why I said WWE is because it's more of an entertainment aspect. It's more accessible. And if you become a WWE fan and you find a particular style that you're a fan of, then you can go off and say, hey, look, you like that hard-hitting, strong style like Shinsuke Nakamura? Hey, look, let me show you the New Japan Pro Wrestling G1 U.S. title tournament 2-night series. That gives you a pretty good indication of what New Japan Pro Wrestling is. You like a little bit more of that high-flying, hybrid, cruiserweight style. Here's Lucha Underground. How cool is that? I just feel like you can branch out from WWE everywhere. So, with that being said, I'm going to read down the list of the matches that I was given that people would show a non-wrestling fan to make them a wrestling fan. So we're going to start off with a very interesting choice. Undertaker, Mankind, Hell in a Cell. One of the most brutal matches that's ever taken place. And my comment to this was that, this is getting them into the current product. That is absolutely the furthest thing from what the current product looks like. That is something you show somebody when they're a wrestling fan and they say, and they're like, what are some of your favorite matches? What are the craziest matches? What are some of those brutal matches? Bam, you throw on Foley versus Undertaker, Hell in a Cell, maybe some old school ECW stuff. Then you've got yourself, like some craziness that'll happen. That for me is definitely absolutely not the first match I would show, unless you're dating somebody who may be a little bit of a sadist or a masochist. And hey, if you are, cool, knock yourself out, go for it. Your friends or your significant other more than I do, but that's not what I would go with. But it's still a great choice. It's one of the best matches I've ever seen. I'm kind of going to run through this because a lot of NXT matches were brought up. Now, I said WWE, NXT is an extension, and I can understand where some people were coming from. I had a discussion with somebody where I said, maybe that's the right thing to do because maybe if they show us NXT, they can see where some of these stars on the main roster were made. And then somebody said, hey, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's show somebody where all these stars on these rosters were made and how they came to WWE to die. I get it. To a point, it's kind of true, but you do get to see, there are some matches that in NXT that I think are worthy of being, on this list. One match that wasn't named that I'm actually a little upset that nobody actually said because it's a little bit more old school NXT was, Cesaro versus, Sami Zayn in the, best 2 out of 3 falls match, which is fantastic. Just one of the best matches I've ever seen. One of the best 2 out of 3 falls matches I've ever seen. But as far as NXT, these are the matches that were named. The Revival versus American Alpha from TakeOver. I mean, that ladder match with them versus Authors of Pain were great. But the night that the Revival, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of DIY. The night that Revival lost the tag titles to American Alpha, and then the subsequent next event where American Alpha dropped the titles back to Revival, making them the first ever 2-time NXT Tag Team Champions, were both works of tag team art. To me, if you wanted to introduce somebody to tag team wrestling, these tag team matches, they seem a little corny. Really? They do? Watch this. That's what you do. You show them real tag teams, and that right there is one of the best examples of it. I think the Revival versus American Alpha feud in general was great. I think the Revival versus DIY feud was really good. It's those matches are just take your pick. Any of those matches are fantastic. Sami Zayn versus Shinsuke Nakamura, NXT TakeOver came up a few times. This is Nakamura's debut, and now Nakamura is on the main roster, and he's getting a world title shot. So if you want to really show where Nakamura started in the WWE, and you show them that that first match was with against Sami Zayn, I mean that was gonna "This is awesome" chant, which I mean I'm not a big fan of, but deservedly so. That was kind of getting a "This is awesome" chant before they even touched. It's huge. One of the best striking, technical, high-flying match, had a little bit of everything in it. Great contest. Huge fan of Sami Zayn versus Nakamura. That's a great pick. Tyler Bate versus Pete Dunne, the Bruiserweight, for the UK Championship at NXT TakeOver. I mean, what can you say if you're a big fan of British wrestling? I mean, that's what you show somebody. The thing that I think that's a great match. I think it's one of the best matches of the year. A lot of people were naming that as being one of the top 5 matches of the year. That got named a lot. The Cena versus Styles Royal Rumble match and the Omega versus Okada, the 2 matches that they've had, are being named as some of the top matches of the year. And I agree. But for the first time wrestling fan, I don't think I'd show them that match because it's a lot of technical stuff. And I don't think that the technical stuff is what a lot of people really look for. I think, you have a new fan, you want to see them do really cool stuff. And yes, there was some cool stuff in that match, but not as cool as some of the other stuff that was in some of these other matches. I mentioned DIY versus Revival. That's another NXT TakeOver match that had been brought up. I completely agree with that as well. DIY taking the titles from the Revival. The double tap out finish was absolutely fantastic. There was a great tag team contest. I believe that was best 2 out of 3 falls as well. I mean, tag team work of art. Absolutely tag team work of art. That's another huge match on my list as being, something that if, you were talking about tag team wrestling, that's what I would show. So with that being said, I think that may be all the NXT matches that were named. Well, I mean, yes and no. I guess also Sasha versus Bayley was named. We were talking about, some people brought up, if you want to bring up the ladies, you want to bring up the WWE, female WWE superstars, who do you show? And there's 2 matches that stuck out with everybody. It is Sasha versus Charlotte, and that was kind of the idea with Sasha versus Charlotte was any of their matches from what I got with everybody. Somebody specifically said some of their matches on Raw because they felt that the pay-per-view matches were a little weak, except for the Hell in a Cell match. The Hell in a Cell match would be crazy, but I don't know if that'd be the first thing I would show somebody because it's a Hell in a Cell match. If I had to go with a first ever a women's match to show somebody to get into wrestling, Sasha versus Bayley at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 1. Absolutely, this is the prototype female wrestling match you'll ever get. That was damn near flawless. And yeah, Sasha versus Charlotte, absolutely. On those matches on Raw, the pay-per-view matches, absolutely great matches. Yeah, I mean, you have a girl who's like, I want to see, okay, the guys are cool, but, show me a match with the girls. Show me a really good, female wrestling, female wrestlers and what they can do in the ring. I'm showing them Sasha versus Bayley from NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. So, we talked about tag team wrestling. A couple of things that were named as it pertains to. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'll dig into this a little bit in a little bit. I'll dig into that one a little bit later. So, tag team wrestling. Somebody had mentioned Hardys versus the Bar at the Great Balls of Fire pay-per-view, and I gotta say that Hardys versus the Bar, as far as an Iron Man match, it was fantastic. It was a great match, great way to introduce people to a wrestling product. Give them 30 minutes and seeing that these guys can do something different. But an Iron Man match for me doesn't explain the rules. I got to sit there and explain stuff to you. With wrestling, there is a lot to explain. There are some things you have to get used to and some things that are a little bit different. But when you start implementing the idea that somebody can be pinned and then they're still in the match because the match continues, so the clock doesn't stop, might be a little bit too much. So, I mean, as much as I would be, that is a great match and a great introduction, I just don't believe that it's, you want something that's simple but fun to watch, in my opinion, to introduce them to what we have on TV now. Someone else suggested the Usos versus the New Day, the Battleground match, the match previous to that on the previous pay-per-view. I think that's a good idea too when it comes to tag team wrestling. But again, it's tag team wrestling. It's a little bit different. There are some rules. Things can change. a lot going on. I just don't think I would implement, a tag team match as being the first one, but still a great match to get, if, you're starting to get somebody in, you're breaking them in and they've seen a few matches. That's one of the matches that, I would show if you were trying to get an exciting example of tag team wrestling. One of my other friends actually brought up something a little more interesting. It was something that a lot of people wouldn't have brought up, but collectively we brought up something together that actually makes this a little bit more intriguing. Plus the fact that it also opened up the conversation to something else. My friend brought up the idea of showing Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose versus The Miz and the Miztourage from Raw. And I thought that was an odd choice, but she happens to be a big Seth Rollins fan. But I also said, but you know what? That's actually not that bad of an idea because it shows, if you show that whole, maybe not just the one match, but that whole storyline kind of at a deal, or you explain to whoever it is, okay, so Rollins and Ambrose don't really get along because Rollins and Ambrose used to be friends, but Rollins turned on Ambrose and Reigns, and now they're kind of all back to being like on they're kind of fighting on the same side, but they still really don't like each other, kind of a thing. It's interesting. It's something different. And The Miz is a master on the mic, so that introduces The Miz as a mouthpiece. So maybe wrestling-wise, I wouldn't really introduce everybody with that, but I mean, it's a good idea for, to show a continuous continuity storyline that they're building. And if I go and I meet this person tomorrow and they tell me they wanted to see something, I can go back and, go back to the old Raws and, start from, one place and just bring all that up. It's not a bad idea because it brings a big concrete, congruent storyline that's going on right now. It also branched us off into, which I'll use as kind of like the break and, give the back half of this list of some of the ones that I think were actually the best picks that we've had, out of all of them. Promos. You want to get somebody into wrestling? Do you show them a match or do you show them a promo? Now, I said a match. But some people made some arguments for some major promos that have been cut. And I think that that's actually not a crazy idea. You have really good guys on the mic, guys who have cut, guys who have cut, some of the best promos in the world. That kind of does show the WWE and, they're just the way that they do their work, I mean, promos are a huge part of it. And if, you don't have them implemented into storylines, you lose a lot. So, a couple of things that were actually brought to my attention was the Glorious Bomb compilation with Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano with Bobby Roode. I mean, they're funny. The Miz promo from WrestleMania 27 was brought up, and of course, I brought up the pipe bomb. So. I mean, that's a couple of, different ideas of people, saying, hey, you know what? Maybe it's not just the wrestling. Maybe you need the stories. Maybe you need the promos too. I'm intrigued when it comes to that. I think that's a great idea. That's something a little bit different. I'm not adverse to doing that. But when it comes to matches, because that was the question that I asked, these were the ones that I think that were the best answers. Now remember, you're trying to get somebody into the current product. One match was old, but I think it still works, and I think that if you show them that, again, maybe not the very first match because the rules are a little bit confusing, and you don't kind of understand a little bit, but the Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon ladder man match from WrestleMania, I mean, it's a show stealer. It's one of the best matches of all time. It's a great idea for people to go out and to see these, to see a really solid match. It's a different kind of a match. It's brutal. It's high flying. It's cool. It's different. And that's what I like about it. It's different. But that was kind of like on the tail end of it. Like I said, I'm not huge on the idea of putting in, a match that nobody really knows. You got to really explain the rules. I mean, and those rules are a lot easier to explain though, which is why I kind of put it on the more positive side, because climb the ladder and grab the belts and then you win. That's it. Okay. That's not every match. This is just this match, but it's cool. You should watch this. I get that. That could be a first match. Here are a couple that really hit home for me that I think that were the better answers. Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens. Now, so my friend Chris, who had suggested this to me, and I asked him because I saw him in person before I did this podcast, said, which Owens versus Zayn match? And he said, anyone. I said, it's not a bad idea. I think that, their main roster matches were really good. I think that their first match was great, but I think it's hard to explain that, Kevin Owens won the title on a KO. He knocked Sami Zayn out. I do like the idea that was a really good feud. It was very well produced. It was really, very well put together. They seem like they're just gonna be, the whole, fight forever. That's gonna be Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, it seems like, for the rest of their careers. And that's great. It's a great thing, to use that as an example. Another one that I really liked that I felt that kind of got swept under the rug a little bit, and especially because it's a little bit older, not like ridiculously older. It was from, last year, but early last year, was Seth Rollins versus John Cena versus Brock Lesnar in a triple threat match for the WWE Championship. I mean, that had just about a little bit of everything in it. And yeah, it's a triple threat match. Yeah, that's kind of why I'm mentioning it now. Not a big triple threat match fan to be a first match, on this, to show somebody. But I do have to say it was a great wrestling match. It was interesting. It had a lot of characters in it. It shows off the franchise players in the WWE right now. Rollins may be taking a little bit of a back step, but John Cena is always, the main attraction. Brock Lesnar is the beast. A lot of people know who Brock Lesnar is without being wrestling involved. So yeah, that's a great choice. It's a different kind of match, and Brock came up again on this list, and this is one of the ones that I thought was actually really good. In a brutal match, something hard hitting, two guys who just go out after each other and just beat the living crap out of each other. There are the next two matches on this, list are just the perfect examples of it. The first one is Brock Lesnar versus Samoa Joe from Great Balls of Fire. Short match, but you want to keep somebody's attention the entire way through. See something that you may have never seen before. Show what wrestling can really be. Show these big, huge guys throwing each other around and beating the crap out of each other. Brock versus Joe is a great first match, and it's one of them that I thought that I've now started thinking about, that if I had to do this, that's up there on my list. I think that's a great match. Another one is just the entire Roman Reigns versus Braun Strowman feud. I know a lot of people don't like Roman. I know a lot of people, aren't too keen on Strowman, as he's not, a really good catch-can wrestler, but he's a monster, and he is doing well for what he's doing. He is a freak. He's got a lot of power, but these guys beat the crap out of each other. It's hard-hitting. It's entertaining. Every time these two guys step in the ring with each other, it's entertaining to see them beat the crap out of each other. That's a good idea, because that is very relevant right now. Another match that got brought up from 2016 was from SummerSlam 2016, the first ever Universal Championship match between Finn Balor and Seth Rollins. Solid pick. Another great pick. And that is one of those matches that was a little bit underrated that I almost forgot about. But, you can even explain into the middle of that match, oh, there goes Finn into the barricade, bam, ripped his shoulder out of place. He put it back in and finished that match. That's a great story. And I had mentioned this to somebody at one point. If Finn Balor goes on to become a major superstar, that's going to be his Triple H tearing his quad moment. That's going to be the moment that a lot of people are going to talk about. He had perseverance. He cares about the business so much. He put his shoulder back in, continued the match, and won a world championship. That's the magnus opus for Finn Balor. And for me, that is just it was a great wrestling match between the two of them. First ever Universal Championship match. It's historic. It's a good pick. Really solid. Something I didn't even think about. The last two matches I saved were... The last one will be my personal pick, which two other people agreed with me on. And the last one was kind of a late addition to the list because I did this early Tuesday. My friend Jesse popped back onto the thread and said, John Cena, Shinsuke Nakamura, SmackDown Live tonight. That SmackDown Live match between Nakamura and Cena was everything. Cena almost died. He got suplexed on his neck. It shows that, Nakamura is a star that's being on the rise. Cena is, the it guy and can, always puts on a great show. That is the, one of the penultimate matches, and that may be my runner-up. I waited this long to bring that up because, yeah, it's a little new, but by that same point, who cares about it? The time period, that's actually better. It's new. It's brand new. That's a great match to bring up to show people what the current WWE product is all about. So Cena versus Nakamura is a great example, but I think the match that I would show, it's the first thing that popped into my head. When I thought of this question, what would I show to someone who's never seen wrestling before? John Cena, AJ Styles, Royal Rumble, WWE Championship. I'm sorry. A lot of people, I've said this on the Dave Knows Wrestling podcast, which please go subscribe and watch the Dave Knows Wrestling podcast. I've said this on my own show. I've said this to friends. I've gotten looks from people like I was crazy. I've gotten people who've agreed with me. Match of the year. Match of the year. So far, match of the year. I think it was one of the best matches of the past 3 or 4 years. I think this is this could go down as if, properly, the tale is properly told as one of the greatest matches of all time. You want excitement, you want intrigue, false finishes, things you've never seen from these guys before, may never see after. Incredible work on both ends. Two guys walking out of a match looking better than they did walking in, and they were two of the guys at the height of their career, in the height of their career, at the right place, in the right time, in the right match, with the right outcome, in the right city, with the right crowd reaction. That match was damn near perfect. If I was going to be tasked with showing somebody a wrestling match and saying, this is what the WWE is, John Cena, AJ Styles, Royal Rumble. So that's it. With that being said, the idea of I haven't been doing this a little bit. The match of the week. If you guys haven't checked it out, check out Cena versus Nakamura from Tuesday. The match was unbelievable. I know a lot of people, maybe they don't watch SmackDown. There are a lot of people who aren't Cena fans, so they don't really watch a lot of Cena stuff. There are a lot of people who I've noticed that aren't actually really Nakamura fans. They weren't big fans of him on the indies. They didn't really watch New Japan. They saw him come in. They don't understand his character or get his charisma. But you want to see Nakamura put on the best match of his WWE career. You want to see John Cena carry another big match on his back like he always does. Watch Nakamura versus Cena. You will not be disappointed. With that being said, hopefully this entertained you guys a little bit more. Hopefully this, was a little bit something different. It throws a monkey wrench into what I've been normally doing, and I still talked about the current product without having to badmouth fans or the product. So that's always good. Turning over a new leaf here, guys. This is going to be something that I'm going to start doing. I'm going to randomly put up some questions for you guys about the WWE, and if you guys really want to be involved and you listen to this podcast, go on Facebook.com/The Slam Sessions. Like it and subscribe to the page so you get every update, and write to me. Post in that group and say, hey, Slam Sessions, I want to be involved in the next Q&A. Put the question on on the Slam Sessions Facebook too. Don't just leave it to your personal friends. Leave it to your listeners of the show. So you know what, guys? That's what I'll do. So go on there, it's Facebook.com/The Slam Sessions. Go on Twitter and like us as well. It's at The Slam Sessions on Twitter. If you but honestly, Facebook is going to be more interactive. So Facebook.com/The Slam Sessions Podcast Network. Get on there and just, and write to me. Tell me what you guys think of the show. Give me ideas for other, questions I could ask. And if you really do want to be involved, let me know and I will get you involved. That's our show for this week. My name is Albert Albanese. This has been The Slam Sessions. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to The Slam Sessions. Find us on Twitter at The Slam Sessions. We'll see you next time.